Welcome to OTCRNX being broadcast to you from the Idaho Mountains. OTCRNX is a part of Off the Cuff Radio, which you can find on offthecuffezine.com. Also be sure to tune into OTCR Zine Beats every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific.
Come to offthecuffezine.com to also hear Sprinkles Nixon Light Show on Mondays and Wednesday Whispers with Beck Jones on Wednesdays. Monday nights are reading nights in the chat room there, and watch for live interactive classes and sessions, to be coming soon.
The December e-zine is hot off the press with informative, helpful, healing and fun articles, so be sure to spend some relaxing and enlightening time reading that.
Now for your OTCRNX host, Linda Irwin.
Thank you, David and Mike. Everybody, welcome to Off the Cuff Radio Annex. I'm OTCR Linda Irwin, and I'm up in the Idaho Mountains, and I've got a wonderful guest lined up for you today. I want everybody to meet Garnet Schulhauser, but first let me tell you just a little bit about him. Garnet Schulhauser is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife Kathy and little dog Abby. Hello, Abby. After practicing corporate law for over 30 years in Calgary with 2 blue-chip law firms, he retired in 2008, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012. Since the release of his first book, Garnet has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements and has been a frequent guest on radio talk shows. He also has 2 other books out, Dancing Forever with Spirit and Dance of Heavenly Bliss. How are you today, Garnet?
Just fine, thank you, Linda. How about you?
Oh, it's a little chilly here in Idaho, and I guess it's raining where you are.
Yes, it is.
Well, this is a good time to get warm and cozy and stay dry and come listen to some amazing stuff that you've had in your life. Why don't you start out telling us a little bit about Albert?
Well, Albert is one of my spirit guides, and how I met him was I was still practicing law back in 2007, and I was strolling down the street one sunny afternoon in May, and suddenly out of nowhere a homeless man just jumped out in front of me. And he looked like a typical homeless man, except that he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that were penetrating deep within me, and at the same time sending me this wave, this gush of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security. And so I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, sort of basking in the glow from this man. And then he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And when I finally collected my wits, I went into the store to try to find him. I needed to know who he was and why he'd stopped me, and you know, all the things about him. I was very curious. But he was nowhere to be seen in the store, and I went outside in the street again and walked up and down, tried to spot him. But he had seemingly disappeared into thin air. And so the very next day, I went back to the same street at the same time, hoping I could spot this guy again. And after walking up and down several block radius, I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. And I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And that was the beginning of a dialogue that I had with this man off and on over the next several months. And I found out his name was Albert, and he said he was one of my spirit guides in disguise, and that he had physically manifested himself to me as the homeless man to get my attention, draw me into the conversation. Because he said that if he had just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I likely would have thought I was losing my mind. And so that was his way of introducing himself to me. And so after the first 3 times, he no longer showed up as a homeless man, but he was a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. And that encounter and his revelations led to my first book, Dancing on a Stamp, which he asked me to write so that everyone would have his revelations, readily available. And then after the first book was done, he came back into my life again, Linda, in a slightly different format. He appeared in my bedroom one night. I woke up one night suddenly, and I saw this ghost-like sort of ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it moved closer towards the foot of my bed, I could see it was my old friend Albert, but he was in astral form. And he said to me, "Come with me. I'm going to take you on some astral trips to the spirit side, to other places in the universe, because I want you to write about what you see and hear in your next book." So then he just literally grabbed my pulled my astral body out of my physical body, and we floated up to the ceiling and up to a high spot above our beautiful planet. And then from there, in our first trip, we went over to the spirit side. And so that led to my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. And then after that one was finished, he came back into my life again in astral form, same format, showing up in my bedroom unannounced. And this time he took me on a different series of excursions in astral form to other planets in our galaxy and to meet very interesting souls in the spirit side. And that led to my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss.
Wow. And you know what's interesting about that is that the Christmas Carol that we've all grown up and read when we were young,
yes,
the three spirits that do exactly that same thing. So that's not mythology, that's fact. I know I have been in that situation myself. I have been taken the same way, and I have also taken others. So it can happen very easily. You just have to be in the right place and the right time and ready on some sort of super conscious level, I believe. Wouldn't you say?
I'm not quite sure how it happened with Albert and I. Albert seemed to do all of it. I'm not sure that I didn't really have to prep myself. And in fact, the first time he came to me in astral form, I was totally surprised because he had warned me about it. I didn't know it was coming. And so there he was, and then he just he was my my tour leader. Basically, he guided me through to all these places. And he had a very set agenda, Linda. He wanted me to see very specific things and talk to certain people that he had picked out, because he thought that in all these encounters there was a lesson to be learned or a nugget of wisdom for all of us. And so he had a very set agenda. I couldn't dictate where I went, and so I was sort of totally in his hands.
Yeah, it's like that. I remember once in 1989, I was standing up in my apartment and had a glass of tea in my hand, when all of a sudden I was in this classroom somewhere, but I wasn't physically in the classroom. It was just my soul, my sentience. And they were showing me grid lines, is what they called them back then, but we call them ley lines today. And he had this big map of everywhere I'd ever lived since the day I was born in this lifetime, pointing out that everywhere I'd been, I lived on one of these ley lines. And when I came to, back in the physical body, I had gently been laid down on the floor. And it was just an amazing experience. And back in 1989, they didn't really focus on that kind of thing so much. So I felt very fortunate to be given a heads up about all of that.
Sounds like a great experience, Linda. And you're right, in 1989, not many people would have listened to you or believed your story, because there weren't that many spiritual enlightened people back then. There certainly are a lot more now. So I think your story would certainly find a very receptive audience today.
Yes, and you have met with some beings that people may or may not believe in, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I've met with certainly on Earth. I've met with a couple of fabled Earth creatures, mythical creatures that have been the stuff of legends for a long time, like a Sasquatch and an Irish fairy. And I can tell you, had very interesting conversations with them, and they are real. In both cases, the Sasquatch lives in the forested areas of mountainous regions of Pacific Northwest, other places on our planet as well. Irish fairy, of course, in Ireland, and they both are very sensitive, intelligent creatures who have been forced to stay in hiding because they're afraid of humans, because they view us to be violent and aggressive beings, and so they stay in hiding. The Sasquatch, they live in caves underground, and they're very adept at not being found by humans, because they really don't want to be captured by humans and regarded as circus freaks, or prodded and pushed in a human laboratory to find out what makes them tick. They don't want to have any of that, any part of that, and so they just avoid us. And the Irish fairies, they used to roam freely above the ground in Ireland until humans arrived on the island eons ago. And again, they found humans to be violent and aggressive and abusive, and so they were forced as well to live underground, where they are still today. And both of these creatures, the Sasquatch and Irish fairy, totally different sort of in physical form. The Irish fairy was like a tiny, perfect little lady, about 3 feet tall, very beautiful. Sasquatch was like about 9 feet tall, with a dark hair covering her body, much like sort of like almost like a very large ape, and so very physically different, but in terms of their sensitivity, they both had the same story, that they wanted to live openly and in peace and harmony with humans, but they just found us to be not sort of at that stage yet, and so they've been forced to remain in hiding. So it was really an unfortunate tale, and it really goes to show you that where there's smoke, there's usually some fire. So these legends weren't just sort of invented out of the thin air. There is some basis to them, and I actually found out, the true basis for them, because these creatures actually do exist.
I think it's marvelous that you got to see them. It breaks my heart that we can't all get along. I mean, the diversity on this planet, all of the different beings, even amongst the humans. Why can't we all learn to just get along with each other, to be at peace with each other, to allow everyone to live as they are? That just hurts me so much when I hear about the Sasquatch and the fairies being afraid to be out in the open like that. I just want to take them all and say, hey, you've got sanctuary here, don't you?
Well, I totally agree with you, Linda, and I just think that if all humans could have had a conversation with these creatures that I did, I think things would change. But and the problem is, as you say, not only are humans abusive to other creatures and on our planet, we're abusive to each other, which is really unfortunate. And one of the things that Albert was really trying to hit home to me, and that he wanted to me to recount in my books, is the fact that we really have to sort of change our ways, because the abuse that we heap on one another and on our planet with our pollution and all the other creatures is just unacceptable. And if we continue on our way, it's going to end up badly for us. We really have to change our ways, because we're on a course right now that could be disastrous if we don't sort of switch gears and find another path. So that was one of the main overriding messages that Albert gave me throughout all of my encounters with him.
Yes, and then there's also the extraterrestrial beings, which I've been fortunate to be in contact with many, not only of this time space, but of other dimensions and time spaces as well. And you've had that experience?
Yes, I did. I had a couple of encounters. One was on a planet sort of many light years away from Earth, and Albert took me there astrally. And as you know, Linda, when you travel astrally, it's virtually instantaneous to get from point A to point B. We're not restricted by the speed of light. And so this was a planet many light years away. It was where the creatures there lived underground, and they were they looked like sort of similar to spiders, but they were sort of larger. Very intelligent. We communicate by telepathy, and they have been, their civilization has been around for a long time, very advanced. And one of their roles was to monitor all the planets in our galaxy to find out when a planet might be ready to sustain life. And when that happened, they would report it to the Galactic Council, who would then arrange for various ET races with faster than light spacecraft to transport life from one planet to one of these new planets that was capable of harboring life. And they said that's in fact how life on Earth was seeded originally, because they noticed that Earth was ready to go in that regard, and they notified the council. And so all of the or most of the life that we have on Earth was seeded here by ETs a long time ago, including humans. And then I had an encounter with an ET race that was in a large ship circling Earth. And they're also very intelligent. They were, obviously a different race. They had been monitoring Earth right from day one. They were very benevolent. Their goal was to try to help humans, with their struggles with the journey, to try to get over their negative emotions and to advance. And they were very concerned right now that humans were at a crucial point in our development, and they were afraid that because we have the capability of destroying ourselves and all other life on the planet, they were afraid that was the path that we might end up taking, and they really wanted to avoid that, because they had watched previous human civilizations on our planet, like Atlanta and Lemuria and some others we've never heard of, rise up to great heights and then end up destroying themselves, crashing and burning, because they weren't able to control their negative emotions or let their greed and desire for power get out of control. And so they're very much they're just one of many alien races that have been monitoring Earth for a long time, and I'm sure you've met many of them, Linda, and they're all. I was very enlightened by my encounter with them, and very grateful to the fact that these very advanced creatures were there to help us. They were not malevolent in any sense, and they really wanted to help us, but they were restricted by sort of. I mean, they had the capability to sort of destroy all of our weapons if they chose, but they were restricted by the Prime Directive to not unduly interfere with what happens on our planet. So they had to stand by and watch us as we went through all the wars and conflicts that we've had over our history, and they are really trying to hope that we won't do the same to our civilization now, like we did with some of the previous ones.
Well, I have a confession to make. I'm from the Pleiades. I found this out at the end of 2003 when my dad took me astrally to see them. And guess what? They're not all tall, blonde, Nordic types. They look like every type of person that's on the planet Earth. That junk DNA that we have, a lot of that is Pleiadian. And I am one of those people that was part of the downfall of Atlantis. It was my first trip to Earth. And I got into the Ministry of Science. In fact, I was talking back in the 90s about the crystal pyramids in the ocean near the Bermuda Triangle. Now, everybody thought I was nuts. Well, a couple of years ago, they actually discovered those. So, yeah, I remember that time, and I've spent all these lifetimes since then trying to undo the damage, the mindset that caused that, the greed, the need for power. And I've also met the spider beings. They came to me one night and gently touched me. It was sort of a light, staticky touch. And they were telling me that they were from a different time space, a dimension that overlaps ours. And I thought they were the most amazing creatures. I just loved them.
Yeah, I think you may have met some of the same ones that I did. And I've also talked to other people, Linda, who have had previous lives in Atlantis. So I think there's a number of them, around, and not everyone, recognizes or remembers that fact. So you're fortunate to know that. But, and I think that part of the mission for people who, as you say, who did live during the time of Atlantis before it was destroyed, are here now to try to save this civilization from a similar fate.
Oh, definitely. And also, too, I remember it wasn't in my particular lifetime in Atlantis, but my people that lived in Atlantis before everything also started a war with Lemuria. I was told that Lemuria was a very peaceful civilization. They cared for each other. They did all of their own agriculture, and they had their own abilities that the Atlanteans were jealous of. And so they started a war and tried to take everything from the Lemurians. And to this day, my heart breaks for everybody who was there at that time in Lemuria.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate quirk of history, but it's been the sort of the events that have sort of plagued humanity on our planet over the time period. Either destroying themselves or getting into wars and destroying each other, and it's really unfortunate. But that's all water under the bridge now. We can't change that, but we can sort of make sure that our current civilization doesn't go down the same path. And I think that's why, as Albert has told me, he says that the good spirits, the Council of Wise Ones on the spirit side, they've been very active in recruiting very advanced souls to incarnate on Earth to try to help humanity get over this hump that we're in. And they've also been very adept at blasting out messages through many different messengers on Earth. People who host radio shows like you do, Linda, or write books like I do, to try to get the message out to our fellow humans that we have to change our ways. We have to discard our negative emotions, and we have to embrace love and compassion and forgiveness. And that's how we're going to sort of get over this crucial spot that we're in, and raise our vibrations with the goal of ultimately rising up to Earth in a higher dimension, which some people call the New Earth.
Yes, and also social media came about at a time when we needed to be able to get the message out globally and instantly. I was told that as well. So, and
it's a little bit is certainly very helpful. It's certainly, I use it all the time, and I assume you probably do too. It's a great way to get the message out. Our only hope is that there's going to be more and more people as time goes on who actually sign on, listen to the message, and make it part of their lives, because we have to walk the talk, not just talk the talk, and we have to sort of work hard to not only change our lives but convince others around us to change their lives as well. And then and Albert says, sometimes it looks very dire for our situation. If you listen to the nightly news, it looks pretty awful with all the terrorist activities and murders and wars and so on. He says, but if we all pull together, we can get over this part. And he's very optimistic that we will actually make it through this and end up not destroying ourselves.
I agree. If we just light one candle at a time and pass that candle along, eventually the whole world will be lit up, right?
Exactly, and that's the mission we're on. And I'm trying to do my best to get that message out, and I certainly understand that you're trying to do the same. And so it's just a matter of we all have to dig down deep and work away at it and never give up.
Okay, well, we're coming up to about the middle of the show, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll take a break here. And we'll be right back. You are listening to OTCR Annex, associated with offthecuffezine.com. So we will talk at you in just a moment.
When everything is broken and nothing's going right, this wall's been building in your mind, but you'll find a way to live these dreams you hold inside. You can't just live within your grasp, 'cause what's out of reach are all the things that you were meant to be. I will lay you down and I'll show you how to close your eyes and see beyond the doubt. When everything you see is broken and nothing seems it's going right, don't let your heart start to bend. Don't give up the fight. You cannot live by what you see. Only believe when everything just seems so hard to bear, and no one in this world just seems to care. You've got to find a reason why you breathe and never let go of your destiny. I will lay you down and I'll show you how to close your eyes and see beyond the doubt. When everything you see is broken and nothing seems it's going right, don't let your heart start to bend. Don't give up the fight. You cannot live by what you see. Only believe. It's time to let it go. Step into the unknown. It takes your breath away. And this life that we can make, just don't let it slip away. When everything you see is broken down, and nothing seems it's going right, don't let your heart start to bend. Don't give up the fight. You cannot live by what you see. Only believe.
Welcome back to Off the Cuff Radio Annex with Linda Irwin, and my guest today is Garnet Schulhauser, author of Dancing on the Stamp and many, many more. How did you get the title Dancing on a Stamp?
Well, it's interesting, Linda. It was when I was having a conversation one of the times in speaking with Albert, I ended up complaining about something that wasn't going right in my life, and he said to me, he said, your problem is that you're not sort of you're staying on one spot. You're not getting out and exploring everything there is in your beautiful world. And he said, imagine that as a metaphor that the world is like a big beautiful ballroom, and that everyone in the ballroom is up and dancing to the wonderful dance music that's going on, and they're swirling all over the big beautiful ballroom. But he says you are standing on one spot, like you have leg shackles on, and he says you need to break free from your shackles, get out of your comfort zone, and quit dancing on a stamp. And
I
I
like
thought that
that.
phrase was kind of neat, and I thought that would make a good title for my book.
Oh, yeah. It surely puts things in perspective, kind of like the pebble on the beach, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, what other amazing astral experiences have you had? I understand you've also met with some beings who, again, people may or may not believe, but that are historical and of legend.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I had a number of trips to the spirit side, and one of the trips I met with the soul who had lived his last life on Earth as Moses, who was a very dominant historical character, especially in the Bible. And so it was a very interesting conversation. He said that the excuse me, all the plagues that he visited on Egypt in an effort to convince the Pharaoh to release his people from slavery. He says they weren't caused by God, because he said that God, or the source, doesn't really manipulate things on our planet. He caused them himself because he's a master soul who is able to focus his thoughts into powerful beings of energy. So basically, he instigated all the events that people have described to him as miracles, and he was also instrumental in getting his people across the Red Sea. He said he actually didn't part it as such, but he created an interdimensional wormhole that his people could travel through to get to the other side of the Red Sea. And so that was his story. And he said, the Ten Commandments that he created didn't come from God, because he says he confirmed what Albert had already told me, that the God, or the source, does not make rules for us to follow. Moses said he conceived of the Ten Commandments during a period of deep meditation, and he came back and told his people that they came from God, because that would have more force and effect than if he said just came from him. But so that's how the Ten Commandments were created. So that was one interesting encounter. I also had a conversation with Jesus Christ, who was and still is a very advanced master soul. He told me that he incarnated as Jesus Christ the human, over 2,000 years ago. He did so at the request of the Council of Wise Ones. They wanted somebody like him to come and try to help mankind become more spiritually enlightened, to try to set aside their negative emotions and embrace love. And so he came there to preach his message of love and forgiveness and hope, and try to convince humans to live better lives and to love and respect one another more than they already had been. So he incarnated, solely to do that. And as like Moses, he said that the miracles ascribed to him in the Bible, like walking on water and turning water into wine, were the result of the fact that he as well could focus his thoughts into powerful beams of energy. So he basically created all those events that have been called miracles. He did so to draw attention to himself, because he felt that way he'd have more of a following. And I mean, and it worked. I mean, the Christian church has like over 2 billion followers, so he started an amazing movement. He said that he's not happy with some of the rules and beliefs that the holy men who followed him have developed for the Christian church. But he likes the fact that they're still spreading his core message, and overall he's happy. He says you can't predict where humanity will go once you sort of start an idea or a movement with them, and so he's watching sort of with fascination as the church developed, and he's a very interesting soul, very compassionate, wise soul. And I said to him, if you could create miracles yourself, why did you let yourself be crucified on the cross? And he said, well, I could have prevented that, of course, but he thought it would make a more dramatic statement for his followers if he died on the cross and then later rose from the grave and ascended up to heaven. And so that's why he allowed his crucifixion. So he was a very compassionate soul who really wanted to do his best to help humanity, further their cause and become more spiritually enlightened.
Yes, I've always had that feeling. I've never actually been told, but I always felt that he came here to show us who we truly are and how we need to love and respect each other, and that the miracles are not miracles at all, but something that we are all capable of doing, just that it's been suppressed, by those in authority. And of course the crucifixion to show that we live on after we leave the body, no matter how badly damaged we are, to start living and realizing that we are in eternal sentience. It isn't something that just goes away when the body dies.
No, absolutely, and that was one of the things that Albert kept on hammering home to me is that he said, look at you and everyone else, you're all eternal souls. And when your physical body dies, that's just a transition point where your soul leaves your physical body and transitions back to the spirit side. The spirit side, of course, which some people refer to as heaven or the other side or beyond the veil, that's our true home. That's where we exist in our natural state as beings of energy, and and we come here incarnate as humans on Earth to learn and experience things to help us with our evolution, and it's by our own free choice. And so we're all here on a journey of exploration and learning that we chose before we were born, Linda, as you know, even though we don't remember that, but it's all part of the evolution that we have as souls to try to become more wise and more advanced in our travels and as we explore the universe. And he, as he said many times, we don't just have to incarnate on Earth as humans. We can incarnate as animals. We can incarnate as living life forms on other planets. And there's millions and millions of other life forms on other planets. And you mentioned that you had originally been a Pleiadian. That's just one example of a place that you can incarnate.
Mm-hmm. In fact, there are many types of forms that you can incarnate into. I know people that have been in the reptilian group, as well as the insectoids, and even what they call the Roswell Greys, the Zeta Reticulans. And they all have their own upbringing, their own culture, their own society, and their way of doing things and their belief systems. And I believe that in order to expand ourselves as souls, we have to experience all these different ways of being, whether it's just being in a physical planet that has plants and animals that we use to sustain our physical bodies, or a planet that uses methane to breathe, or those that live underwater. There's just an endless variety of places we've been, I believe, and that we've experienced.
No, I totally agree with you. And the neat thing about it, Linda, is that as souls, we get to choose sort of where we go in what order and what we want to experience, and sort of we map out our own path for evolution in terms of which planets we go to first, which ones we go to second and third, and so on, and what kind of life forms we want to live in. And there are some people who are humans on Earth who have been in many, many different life forms. There are some who've only been in a few, and there are some who are basically new souls who have just started off by being animals on Earth and gradually progress up to humans. And so everyone has a different path. No one dictates our path to us, and there's no timetables or deadlines for evolution. We can go fast, we can go slow. It's entirely our choice, which really makes it attractive, intellectually for me, because I know that there's nobody dictating my path of evolution. I choose it for myself.
Exactly. And one of the things we've come to learn in more later years, at least in our generation, is how advanced whales and dolphins are. We always think of them as just fish in the sea, even though they're mammals. But they're very intelligent creatures, and they have the power to communicate through telepathy. And they are helping trying to change the planet, too, for the better.
Absolutely. And I can actually tell you that I had the experience firsthand, which I describe in my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, where I had a conversation with a killer whale, an orca, that was captive in an aquarium. Again by telepathy, and this killer whale was a very wise, sensitive, spiritual being, and very intelligent. And she basically said, whales and dolphins are very intelligent, in some ways more intelligent than humans, because they can communicate by telepathy, and most humans cannot. So they're more advanced than us. They don't have any technology because they don't really need it. They don't want it. They want to live close to nature in harmony with Gaia, and that's sort of their role here. And they're very sort of upset at the way that humans have been abusing them over the centuries, with hunting and trapping them, or getting them caught in our our nets and so on, or like in her case, capturing them in the wild and putting them into a concrete aquarium, a concrete prison. And her plea to me was, try to convince your fellow humans to let me go. I want to roam freely again in the ocean, and try to convince them that whales and dolphins, we just want to live in harmony, in peace and harmony with humans. We don't want to cause you any harm, but we really hope that you stop the harm that you have been causing us over the years.
Very definitely. And Gaia herself is alive, the planet itself. And I remember a phrase in the Bible that always stood out to me, and even the rocks cry out. That's because the rocks of Earth are very much alive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a conversation with Gaia, which I describe in my third book, and which was Albert took me on an astral trip. We went to the North Pole, dropped down through the ocean underneath the subsurface of the land into a cavern, and there I had a conversation with Gaia, and it surprised me a bit because at the time I wasn't aware that Gaia was like a living consciousness, and I found out soon enough that Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth, is very wise, sensitive, very protective. Gaia wants all of her flora and fauna to live in peace and harmony, and she was really quite upset, just like the orca was, that humans had been sort of with all our pollution, we're harming not only Mother Earth and her other creatures, but we're harming ourselves as well. And she basically said, look, if humans don't change their course that they're on, don't stop the pollution, don't stop the abuse, we're going to end up, or we could very well end up in very bad times. That was her plea to me, was to say, look, humans, you've been making some good progress in terms of curbing your pollution in the last few years, but you need to do a lot more than that. Otherwise, it could end up badly for us.
I agree. So if everybody listening to this show would pass the information along, share the link where you can. We'd like to get this message out to as many as we can, because it is time to turn things around. We've been going down this negative, destructive road for too long. We love this planet. Let's make this planet sustainable, peaceful, beautiful, and happy again. Garnet, we're running down on time a little bit. I've only got the 45-minute plan, but can you tell everybody about your books and how all the different places they can reach you?
Sure. The best source of information, Linda, is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's not easy to remember, but if you Google Dancing on a Stamp or Dance of Heavenly Bliss, you can get to my website. There's information about all three of my books. You can download a free excerpt from each book. You can watch a book video for each book. You can dial into all my social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on to get information about what's happening in my life and when my next books are coming out. There are buy links for my books to all the popular online bookstores like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and many others. So you'd have to click on there and get right to the point where you can buy my books. And my email address is on my website. I'd be happy to have questions or comments from your readers. And finally, there's a spot on my website where a page where you can listen to all the previous radio shows that I've been on. And so far, this is show number 112, Linda, that I've been on, and people can listen to all of them or any of them if they want to.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. I'll have to go do that. 112 is a good number. I like that number.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts before we go?
No, just the overriding message from Albert is that our mission as humans is we need to discard our negative emotions like fear, anger, and hate, embrace love and compassion, and if we can do that, we'll make our world a better place to live in, we'll raise our vibrations, and we'll have a much happier journey on this planet.
Oh, I so agree. Garnet, thank you so much for being on with me today. I hope you stay warm and dry, and tell Albert hello and give Abby a pat for me, okay?
I will do, and Linda, thank you for inviting me on your show.
Thank you so much. Well, everybody, our time is out, and I'm going to go ahead and say namaste, love everyone, peace everyone, and remember, OTCR, off the cuff, that's the place to be. Okay, well, good night.
Thank you for listening today, and this show will be available in archives. OTCR Annex is a part of Off the Cuff Radio, which you can find on offthecuffezine.com. Also be sure to tune in to OTCR Zine Beats every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific.
Remember to also come to offthecuffezine.com to also hear Sprinkle's Light Show on Mondays and Wednesday, Whispers with Beck Jones on Wednesdays. Monday nights are reading nights in the chat room there, and watch for live interactive classes and sessions to be coming soon.
The December e-zine is hot off the press with informative, helpful, healing and fun articles, so be sure to spend some relaxing and enlightening time reading that.
Be sure to like and share. Tell your friends.
I am AI David.
And I am AI Mike.